Well, folks, let's jump right in, shall we? There's been a lot going on around the NFL lately, and we're going to start with Dolphins wide receiver Tyreek Hill. Police were called to his home on Monday. Seems there was a domestic dispute with his wife. Now, no charges were actually filed, but it gets a little more complicated. Hill's mother-in-law was actually the one who called the police. The report says she told the officers that Hill was being, and I quote, very aggressive and impulsive, and she was worried about her and daughter's safety. It seems like things got pretty intense. The report says there was an argument. Hill allegedly threw his wife, Kita Vaccaro's laptop, and then, and this is a little unsettling, took their 4-month-old daughter out onto the balcony of their apartment. And folks, this is on the 35th floor. Vaccara told the police that she and Hill had been trying couples therapy, trying to work through some frequent disagreements, but it sounds like it wasn't really helping. She was actually, according to the report, in the process of filing for a divorce. And she said the argument that day started because she confronted Hill about not being involved enough with their daughter. And to add fuel to the fire, TMZ is reporting that Hill was served with divorce papers the very next day. Both Hill and Vaccaro told the police that the argument didn't get physical, but the officers did notice a bruise on Vaccaro's chest. She explained it away as an accident that happened when Hill picked up their daughter at the beginning of the argument. The police report says the baby appeared unharmed, and thankfully, the officers left without any charges or citations. Vaccaro chose not to give a written statement, and Hill ended up leaving the residence about 40 minutes after the police arrived. Now, the Dolphins naturally released a statement. They acknowledged the police were at Hill's home. They said they spoke to both Hill and his family. The police left without any further incidents, and the case is closed. They did say the team's been talking to both Hill and the NFL, but as you can imagine, they're not commenting any further. Now, this unfortunately isn't the first time Hill's been involved in an off-field incident since joining the Dolphins back in March 2022. In 2023, there was an investigation because he was accused of assaulting someone who worked at the Oliver Marine Center in Miami. That situation was settled out of court. Hill didn't face any discipline from the NFL. He's also involved in a civil lawsuit by Sophie Hall, who claims Hill broke her leg during a backyard football drill in June 2023. She's saying that Hill got frustrated with her during these drills and intentionally injured her. Hill, of course, is denying this. He says she actually broke her leg by tripping over a dog. Then, in September 2024, Hill was stopped by the police, detained briefly for speeding. He was on his way to the Dolphins game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Apparently, there was a bit of a verbal altercation between Hill and the officers, and he ended up handcuffed. All this happened near Hard Rock Stadium, and wouldn't you know it, the whole thing was caught on video. The officer involved was put on administrative duties. Despite all this, Hill still played in the game and, get this, had 130 receiving yards and a touchdown in the Dolphins' win. After the Dolphins season ended in January, there were rumors swirling about Hill being traded. And remember, he briefly left a game during the season. Afterward, he hinted that he might be open to playing for another team, even made some, lighthearted jokes about it on social media. But then he apologized to his teammates and his quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. At the NFL's annual meeting back in March, Dolphins coach Mike McDaniel said that he fully expects Hill to stay with the team for the 2025 season. He seemed pretty confident that their relationship was in a good place and that there was no reason to think otherwise. The Dolphins actually restructured Hill's contract before the 2024 season, added more guaranteed money to his extension. Now, Hill did have wrist surgery this offseason, but he's expected to be ready for training camp this summer. Okay, let's shift gears for a bit. Let's talk about the Indianapolis Colts. Their offensive tackle, Braden, he's been sharing details about his struggle with severe obsessive-compulsive disorder and his journey back to health. You might remember Smith missed the last 5 games of last season because of a personal matter. Well, in a recent interview, Smith was incredibly candid about just how difficult things had gotten. He talked about spending 48 days in a treatment facility, and he even revealed that he used ibogaine, which is a psychedelic drug. He believes that treatment really helped him. He said he was in such a dark place, so tormented, that he actually contemplated suicide. Said he was nowhere to be found mentally and that he was close to putting a bullet through his brain. Smith, who's 29 years old, was diagnosed with religious scrupulosity. Now, this is a form of OCD that revolves around anxiety, fear that your actions might offend God or be seen as blasphemous. And this can lead to obsessive behavior like, constant praying or always needing to repent. Smith talked about how difficult it was trying to live up to the, quote, standard of Jesus. Early last season, Smith started seeing a psychologist, and he even had a conversation with his wife, Courtney, about the possibility of retiring if his condition didn't get any better. By November, he checked himself into a mental health facility in Colorado. But even after several weeks, he didn't see much improvement. So he started looking into ibogaine. Now, this psychedelic is illegal in the US, but it does show some promise for treating mental health conditions. So, Smith made the decision to go to Mexico for this treatment. After the treatment and continued therapy, Smith says he's doing a lot better. He talked about wanting to be himself again, for the people he cares about to experience that. He felt like he had something to offer them. He also mentioned that his compulsive behaviors has significantly decreased. He's not constantly praying anymore, and he's able to dismiss those intrusive thoughts without letting them take over his day. He contrasted this with how it used to be, where he'd spend 3 to 5 hours every day stuck in those compulsions. The Colts seem to be really supportive of Smith's recovery. Chris Ballard, their general manager, recently talked about how great it was to have Smith back and how well he's been playing. Now, given Smith's original salary cap figure for 2025, which was $19.75 million, and his history of knee problems, the Colts asked him to restructure his contract. Smith agreed to an $8 million salary, which brought his cap figure down to $10.4 million. He explained his decision by saying he has unfinished business in Indianapolis. Now, in other Colts news, the team decided to release their picker Matt Gay on Thursday. This comes just 2 years after they signed him to a 4-year, $22.5 million contract. During his time with the Colts, Gay made 82.1% of his steal balls and 98.6% of his extra point attempts. Letting Gay go will free up $2.75 million in salary cap space for the Colts. There also means they'll have a $4 million dead money charge. Gay earned this contract after a really solid 3 years with the Los Angeles Rams, where his field goal percentage was 92.5%, and he made 97.9% of his extra points. He was actually a 5th-round draft pick by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers back in 2019. Over his entire career, Gay has a success rate of 85.5% on field goals and 96.3% on extra points. With Gay going, Spencer Schrader is currently the only kicker on the Colts roster. All right, let's head over to New York now. The Jets wide receiver, Allen Lazard, agreed to a pretty significant pay cut to stay with the team. There have been talk that the Jets might release Lazard because of his $11 million non-guaranteed base salary for 2025. Favre's been back and forth. Lazard and the Jets restructured his contract. His new base salary is $2.25 billion, and he could earn an extra $250,000 to roster bonuses that are paid out on a game-by-game basis. The Jets guaranteed $1.75 million of his base pay, and he avoided the final year of this contract, the one in 2026, so he'll be a free agent after this upcoming season. What this all means is that Lazard's 2025 cap charge goes down from $13.2 million to $4.6 million, and there will be a $4.4 million dead money charge in 2026. Reports say that Lazard was actually given me okay to try and find a trade back in early March, but, well, no other teams were interested. But Jets general manager Dan Luthi said in late March that they were still talking about a revised deal. And just recently, Jets coach Aaron Glenn had some good things to say about Lazard. He praised his blocking skills and what he brings to the team. And, Glenn actually coached against Lazard back when Lazard was in Green Bay. Right now, Lazard and Garrett Wilson are the top 2 receivers coming back to the Jets. The team also signed veterans Josh Reynolds and Tyrod Johnson. Oh, and one more thing about Lazard, he's actually the only player on the Jets who was also a teammate of Aaron Rodgers back in Green Bay. Over the last 2 years, the Jets have been really focused on building a team around Rodgers. They started by giving Lazard about 4-year, $44 million contract back in March 2023. They also brought in Randall Cobb and went after Devontae Adams. The idea was to surround Rodgers with guys he already knew and was comfortable with. They even brought in Nathaniel Hackett, his former offensive coordinator. But, well, things didn't quite go as planned. The Jets went 12-22 during those 2 seasons, and there's been a lot of changes in the organization. It's been a bit of a roller coaster for Lazard with the Jets. He's had 60 catches for 851 yards and 7 touchdowns. His performance dipped in 2023, and, there was that time he got benched. He even admitted that Rodgers getting injured and being out for the season affected his focus. Now, in 2024, when Rodgers was healthy at the start of the season, Lazard had a good start, but then he missed 5 games because of the sternum injury, and he ended up losing his starting spot to Adams. He finished the season with 37 receptions, 530 yards, and 6 touchdowns. But he did lead the team in drops of 7. Over his 7 seasons in the NFL, with both the Packers and the Jets, Lazard has 229 receptions for 3,077 yards and 27 touchdowns. With one of the Jacksonville Jaguars, their quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, he's recovering from shoulder surgery. He had the procedure back in December to repair the AC joint in his left shoulder. He's going to be limited in what he can do in spring practices, but the good news is that the Jaguars are pretty optimistic that he'll be fully cleared by the time training camp starts. Coach Liam Cohen said they're still figuring out exactly how much Lawrence will be drilling, but they're keeping a close eye on his progress. Cohen seemed pretty positive about how Lawrence is doing. He mentioned that Lawrence will be on a pitch count, not pushing it too hard. But overall, things are moving in the right direction, and Lawrence is feeling good. Lawrence had the surgery on December 17th. He was in a sling until the end of January. He said he doesn't have a firm date for when he'll be fully cleared, playing out that the season doesn't start until fall. But he feels confident that he'll be ready well before then. He's already throwing, and he's gradually increasing the distance and how many throws he's making. The key is to be smart about it and not rush things. Lawrence first hurt his shoulder in the game against Philadelphia on November 3rd. He had to miss the next 2 games, then came back to play against Houston on December 1st. But in that game, he got a concussion and didn't play again for the rest of the 2024 season. He had to clear a concussion protocol before having surgery on December 15th. Now, this wasn't the first time Lawrence had surgery on the shoulder. Back in February 2021, he had surgery to repair a labrum tear, and that limited what he could do during his rookie activities. Since Lawrence won't be throwing as much this offseason, he can really focus on improving his footwork. Coach Pellin identified that as an area where Lawrence could make some improvements. Now, he's not taking that major changes, more like fine-tuning. Cohen talked about how important it is for Lawrence to have really solid core fundamentals and footwork, especially in those crucial moments of a game. And this offseason is a great opportunity for Lawrence to really zero in on that. Lawrence himself admitted that his footwork hasn't always been perfect, and he's happy to be addressing it now, both when he's at the facility and when he's working out at home. All right, let's move on to the Cleveland Browns. Their quarterback, Deshaun Watson, is rehabbing after re-tearing his right Achilles tendon. Now, this isn't hard one, folks. This injury could very well keep him sidelined for most of the 2025 season, maybe even the entire season. Watson posted a message on Instagram, addressing all the people who are doubting his ability to come back from this. He said he believes he's going to come back even stronger. Now, this comes after the Browns' co-owner, Jenny Haslam, said that the team's trade for Watson back in March 2022 was a big swing and miss. The Browns gave up 3 first-round draft picks to the Houston Texans to get Watson, and then they signed him to a 5-year contract, fully guaranteed, for $230 million. Haslam admitted they gave up a lot in that trade. They haven't gotten the consistent quarterback play they were hoping for. The Browns haven't given a timeline for Watson's return. He originally tore his Achilles back in October, had a second surgery in January after he retore it. The Browns coach, Kevin Stefanski, said that Watson is making good progress with his rehab, that he's working hard every day and right on track with where he should be in the recovery process. The Browns still owe Watson $46 million for each of the next 2 seasons. That's a total of $173 million left on his contract. And, between injuries and an 11-game suspension back in 2022, Watson has only started 19 games for the Browns. And his total QBR since joining Cleveland, well, it's been significantly lower than other quarterbacks. Let's circle back to the New York Jets. Their new quarterback, Justin Fields, popped about his experience being benched by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Fields just signed a 2-year contract with the Jets last month, and he's going to be their 8th different Week 1 quarterback in recent years. Think about that for a second. He actually helped the Steelers to a 4-2 start last season while Russell Wilson was recovering from an injury. But once Wilson was healthy, Fields was benched, and he didn't get another chance to play. But Fields has a really positive attitude about the whole thing. He believes that experience will actually make him a better quarterback for the Jets, where of course he's taking over for Aaron Rodgers. Fields said that Coach Tomlin made a decision that he felt was best for the team, and he respects that. While he was the backup, Fields said he just focused on getting better every day in practice. The Steelers actually tried to re-sign him, but the Jets came in with a strong offer, a significant guarantee, and the chance to be their quarterback for the long term. Fields was adamant that being benched didn't factor into his decision to join the Jets. He's excited about the Jets coaching staff and what they're building. Fields was the Chicago Bears' first-round pick in 2021, and he ended up being replaced there. They traded him to Pittsburgh, and in his time there, he threw 5 touchdowns, ran for 5 more, and had a career-high completion rate. This was after 3 seasons with the Bears. Fields feels like he's improving every year, and he's pumped for the upcoming season. The Jets coach, Aaron Glenn, thinks Fields has a ton of potential. He sees him as a dynamic player who can do even more as a drop-back passer, in addition to his running ability. Glenn has already named Fields the starting quarterback, and Brandon Stevens, the Jets' newly signed cornerback, had some really positive things to say about Fields' leadership potential. All right, one last stop before we wrap things up. The Dallas Cowboys, they've agreed to a 1-year deal with offensive lineman Sadiq Charles. This is a veteran player, and this move gives the Cowboys some depth on their roster before the draft. Apparently, Charles really impressed the team during a workout last week. Now he's played both tackle and guard, but the word is he'll probably be playing on the interior wing for the Cowboys. Charles was drafted by Washington in the 4th round back in 2020. He started 18 of his 35 games over 4 seasons. Then, last year, he signed with the Tennessee Titans and was expected to be a starter. But then during training camp, he abruptly decided to retire. He later changed his mind and was released from the Titans' reserve retired list. Charles is the Cowboys' latest roster addition, either through free agency or trade, since mid-March. They also recently signed offensive lineman Robert Jones. And the Cowboys coach, Brian Schottenheimer, has been singing the praises of Brock Hoffman, another offensive lineman. The Cowboys have the 12th pick in the upcoming draft, and they've been hosting quite a few draft prospects lately. But we've covered a lot today, from some serious off-the-field situations and player moves to injury updates and what's going on with different teams. Definitely a busy time in the NFL as all the teams get ready for the new season. That's all for today, folks. If you enjoyed this kind of deep dive into all things NFL, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. We're bringing you all the latest news and analysis. So until next time, take care.